Hi there. Let's talk about your diet. Let's talk about when to add and when to subtract. I think this is the most important question you can really answer and you get a good sense on. It's really easy to go too far down either path. I'll tell you why I think this is relevant. Let me just give you a quick background on my own story with diet. Uh, I was pretty obese as an adolescent, and my first step was really subtracting. I read some books about health and fitness nutrition, and I subtracted sugar from my diet. I subtracted also bread. I cut out bread as my first couple big steps. I added in quite a bit of exercise, and that's a separate topic. But between those two changes, I was able to improve my body composition, improve my fitness, lose a bunch of weight, real good. Somewhere around my teens, I think my senior year of high school, we lost our home from a fire, and it was a pretty stressful, painful time. Um, After that, I really relapsed on my dietary patterns, and I gained a bunch of weight back again. I put on quite a bit, and I was a very unhealthy kid just coming up to my senior graduation. So the next few years I spent regaining health again, and I first cut out some of the common foods that I did before, and it was helpful. It worked really well. Then I read more books. There were some newer ideas coming out. This would have been the late 80s. And I started subtracting more and more. I thought, hey, if I did this well by cutting out some junk food, what if I cut out all animal protein? What if I went vegetarian? And initially, I had some gains to my mood. I felt lighter, I felt more energized, and I thought, wow, this is the ticket. I'll cut things out and I'll feel better. And after a little while, my energy started really dropping, and I found myself getting strong food cravings. And I found that I was just not able to stay satisfied. I was wanting more and more, and I was not in the best mood. I was really, at first, it seemed like everybody else was kind of getting on my case. And finally, I thought, oh, wow, this is me. I'm the common thread in all this. And I realized, hey, last time I cut some things on my diet, it helped. So what can I cut out this time? What is it that I'm eating now that's making me feel bad? That was really the assumption. I'm eating something that's making me feel badly. So I cut further. And boy, I had years of a journey of, you name it, yogic diet, macrobiotic, raw food, vegan, everything I could really find at the time, everything in between. And the funny thing happened was that whenever I would cut something out for a little while, I would feel better. And in retrospect, I think a lot of it was psychological. I think a lot of it was that I felt that now I was on the path. I had figured out what the bad thing was that was poisoning me and contaminating my body, and now I'd be back on track again. For a while, I would get a boost from that. But very quickly, the psychological gain would fall short, and the nutritional inadequacy would become undeniable. And I kept feeling worse and worse. So my recovery involved adding and adding more diversity in the diet. And eventually I was able to regain my muscle mass and get more sustained energy and have better health. And I reached a place where I realized, your diet can wreck your life. You can really have struggles with your weight, or on the opposite end, you can be off nutritionally and obsessed with food. So your diet can really wreck things. But your diet is not the source of all things positive. Your diet can bring you up to where you can function, but your diet will not allow you to really elevate or grow your life or make the impact that you want. It's a tool. It's not the end unto itself. So when do you add and when do you subtract? If you're starting the journey and you've been on a pretty common diet, lots of processed foods, typical American fare, subtracting might be a smart step. I can think of no better synopsis than Michael Pollan's phrase of, eat food, as in food, not things that are not food. So if a lot of what you're eating is not food, subtracting might be smart for you. Cut out things that you can't pronounce, things that have weird ingredients, things that just don't belong in our food supply in general. If you've already done a lot of that, you might be needing to add. You might want to think about, of all the things that are food-like and things that we have eaten, maybe you're getting too few. And the difficulty is that the more limited your diet gets, the more limited your digestion becomes. So we're omnivores, and that means that potentially we can subsist on a big range of foods. We won't fall dead tomorrow without a steak. We won't fall dead tomorrow without a bowl of rice. We've got a lot of range of foodstuffs that we can subsist on and live on. So our digestive apparatus has many different ways it can work based upon what we're getting. Our bowel flora can change, pancreatic enzymes can shift, how much stomach acid we make can change, and these are all ways in which we adapt to a range of different foods. But it takes a little time. We can't shift abruptly overnight. So I've seen many get backed into a corner by cutting out more and more foods. Is this helicopter going to come right overhead here? Hey, search and rescue. We're doing all right here, thanks. We're having a good time. So the more foods you cut out, the fewer foods you can digest. And I've seen so many people tragically wreck their health by misinterpreting short-term symptoms when they add foods back into their diet to mean that they cannot have those foods ever, that they have to limit their diets further and further. So don't go down that pitfall. We're omnivores. The more range of foods that we eat, the more range of foods we can digest. So you may need to add. If there's too few foods you've eaten, if you've already cut out the big processed synthetic stuff, after that point, think more about what you can add, what kind of range you can add in. So it's all about getting your math right. Should you subtract? Should you add? Both can be appropriate. Subtracting in terms of things that are synthetic, things that are chemicals, things that weren't food 100 years ago, I would take very little effort in subtracting them. You wouldn't have to put a ton of thought into it or debate. Go ahead and subtract them, that's fine. In terms of actual foods that were around 100 years ago that humans have eaten for a long time, and by a long time, I would argue against the idea that we can only eat the foods that we've eaten in the last 8,000 years. We've actually had grains and beans in our diet for a lot longer than that, and we can adapt to foods much more quickly than that, even over the order of a few thousand years or less. So of the foods we've had even since the last century, the whole crisis of obesity and health really escalated in the 1980s. So foods that we had in the past before the whole processed food revolution, I would be very cautious about subtracting those foods. If there's strong evidence, if there's clear signs that your body's having an immune response that's documented, consider it. But even then, see if you can't do it in a way to where it could be corrected. So actual foods, if you got to subtract them, have some strong evidence, be cautious about it, and make up with as much diversity of other foods as you can. Otherwise, adding is the way to go. Adding in variety, adding in new vegetables, different nuts and seeds, different protein sources, different intact whole grains, beans and legumes. Try to add more than you subtract, and your body will have more diversity, a broader, healthier digestive flora, and more ability to really thrive. Just like my friend over here can thrive on almost nothing. He's actually living, well, that's quite a silly thing to assume it's a male because they don't really have genders, but this cactus is living, emerging right out of the rock on which we're standing and doing quite well. So the more adaptive we can become, the more adaptive we can be. Take good care. We'll talk soon.